Hello, and welcome to Storytime with HDTHUL. I am HDTHUL, and anyways, before I begin, I'd like to say a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to thank my cameraman, my beautiful wife, Suzanne Toole. She's the one that's holding the camera. Um, Second of all, if you like what you're hearing, um, push that little like button at the bottom and subscribe. And lastly, I got 4 books that are on Amazon, and they're all under HDTHUL. Last name spelled THUL. It's not spelled the way it sounded. That's why I gotta spell it. Anyways, we're getting ready to begin chapter 2. So, without any more interruptions, here we go. The Henderson's market was a decent-sized extension of the Henderson's home, though it was a small-town grocery store. Chris, still beaming from his sexual encounter with his teacher, is walking tall, like a man, his face radiant with the joy and excitement of his final release, which is what she wanted. His final release, his seed, his baby. And Dylan couldn't give her a child on the account that he is impotent and sterile. But Chris could. "Chris!" Daniel shouted, followed with a hard backhand across the face. "Pay attention," he continued. Daniel was tough, but he was tough lovingly, as he would call it. It would be better that Daniel slapped the shit out of him than that he cut his finger off with the bandsaw that he was cutting a T-bone steak with. What was that for, Dad?" "God damn it, son, I told you 1,000 times to shut the fucking saw off when you're not using it." "Sorry, Dad." "It's okay, don't cry. Now look, I didn't mean to hit you like that, but Jesus, you scared the shit out of me." I'll pay attention, Dad. "I know you will." What had happened was that Chris walked away from the saw while it was still running. And as Chris was coming back to the saw, bam! Chris was nearly knocked out, and he saw stars for a brief second. He shook it off, but he saw double for a little bit, and then his vision went back to normal within a few seconds. In the meanwhile, Leonard was busy cutting ribeye steaks on a long cutting board, just adjacent from the saw. He looked up from his workstation, and anger fermented in his eyes as he gazed at Daniel with pure hatred. "Why did you have to hit him? It's better that I hit him than that he or anyone else gets cut from that bandsaw because he was too stupid to shut it off." "There wasn't anyone by the saw. You didn't have to do that. It's not his fault. He has a disability. You're making excuses for him again. If you hit him like that again, I'm going to kill you." "Oh, that's good," Daniel said sarcastically. "You're going to kill me. You couldn't beat yourself out of a wet paper bag, and you're going to kill me." "I will kill you, just like we kill the cows or the pigs in the back if you hurt Chris one more time." This time, his gaze was more serious as he saw the look on Leonard's face. The meat department was located in the back of the store. There was a large window exposing the butcher block, which was located behind the display case, where there was butcher's paper laid out neatly on top of racks that were laid on the bottom of a refrigerated meat case. On top of the paper was all different types of steaks and roasts, starting from ribeyes that were laid out from the top of the back to the case, close to the meat cutters workstations, to the front of the case, facing the wide open wood flooring with the wood stove directly in the center of the store, next to the neatly stacked pile of wood. There was a pipe that extended from the top of the stove up to the ceiling to let the smoke out. But this was September, and the wood stove was not getting used as much. So since it was not getting used, there was not a neatly stacked wood pile as there would have been if it was getting used. There were long aisles of grocery shelves staggered away from each other as there were a total of about 6 to 8 grocery shelves spaced out through the store. After the ribeyes in the meat case were the T-bones, then the New York strip, followed by the bottom round steaks and the chuck steaks, and so on. Then after the steaks were the roasts, which were laid out neatly in the same manner as the steaks. Then there was a display for pork, which was followed by after the beef was after that was the lamb, followed by that was labeled miscellaneous. That was where if someone brought a deer or pheasant or squirrel or just whatever was shot and killed and then sold to the Hendersons, as they would of course cut it up and sell it in their store if the customer sold the miscellaneous items to the Hendersons, or if the customer had wanted the Hendersons to cut it for their own personal meat supply. The customer would of course have to pay the Hendersons a fee for cutting the meat. Sometimes though, there would be a piece of meat in the miscellaneous section that would look hauntingly close to the shape of a human arm or leg. The steak would be either long or slender and about half an inch or a quarter of an inch thick, or they would be more round, but with the evidence of the ulna and radius bones from the forearm or the humerus bone. There was ground meat that was light in color like pork, as some was made as sausages. There was also a case for chicken and turkey and fish. After that was the deli, which had one man or woman there to slice whatever cold meat and cheese you wanted. The deli was located against a wall on the side close by the meat department. There was also a section for hamburger meat and sausage meat. There was also 2 refrigerated display cases of about 10 feet away from the meat case, in which one sold milk and juice and other refrigerated items. The other refrigerated case sold frozen food items. In one of the aisles of the store was a dog and cat food, some with a Henderson's label on it, and others were of course name brand. In the front of the store was 2 cash registers and 2 doors in which to enter or in which to leave the store. In front of the store was a huge window. On the window was usually something written on with white shoe polish, usually saying what the special was for the day or week. Today it says Folgers, $1.50, and porterhouse steaks, $2.50 a pound. Connected to the store from the rear was an average-sized meat processing plant. Daniel had a crew of about 75 to 100 employees. that worked long hours processing the meat for the store. And there was a large building connected to both the grocery store and the store of the Henderson's home, as with the building was bigger than both buildings put together. On the back side of the processing area are corrals for livestock, and there is a place for a semi to come in and unload livestock into the processing area. The livestock area had a roof to protect the animals from the elements, and the livestock area was sectioned off where the poultry was on one side and the pigs were on the other section, and the cows would be in another, and the sheep would be in yet another. And the processing plant had a section where the animals would come in through a chute, and there would be someone there waiting with a bolt gun, which would shoot a 3-inch bolt into the animal's brain, killing it instantly, usually. Though sometimes the animal would just get knocked out for a little while because its skull was too thick, and then wake up with someone cutting on them, and someone would shout, "Hey, this one's still kicking." Then someone would come rushing over with a bolt gun and pop him again. When someone would kill the animal, it would drop through the chute, and someone on the bottom would wrap a chain around the animal's foot or ankle and hoist it up on a rail that was above them, and the animal would get sent into the processing area. And then hooks were cut into each tendon of the animal, and there would be someone cutting the hide from the back of the legs and working down the animal as they would be on a stand sitting up high. Then someone else would cut more hide from the bottom, and by the bottom I mean absolutely inverted, where the bottom is the head of the animal. And the top would be the animal's feet. And the hide is then stripped off the animal by someone cutting a long cut down the animal's side, and then it's pulled off or peeled off. After that, someone else would cut a slit down the belly and pull the guts out of the animal by cutting the membrane behind the guts, and then with one hand on the guts they would pull them out, and with the other hand the guts are then put into a tray that is taken into the rendering section of the plant. After that, someone would use a large saw that was suspended with a cable to cut the animal in half, long ways, and each half was put in a refrigerated area for 24 hours. From there it was quartered, and each quarter of the animal was hung on hooks in a room that was directly behind the store. The plant had a hot section and a cold section. The hot section is where they strip the hide from the animal, gut it out, and split it and quarter it. The cold section is the refrigerated area of the plant, where the halves and quarters would then get cut up in smaller pieces and become easier to work with. After that, the meat is then transferred to the butcher block in the back of the store, where someone cuts the meat directly for the customer, which is usually where the two brothers come in. Through sometimes it is someone else back there. It is just that the Henderson's brothers are well versatile, which is the way Daniel wants it. After all, there will come a day when Daniel can no longer run the store and the plant together, and then that is when Leonard and Chris take over and run the place. So it is in Daniel's best interest to train his boys in every area of both the plant and the store. He is even starting to teach Leonard the office side of the business, the paperwork and the balancing the books. The quarters of the carcasses also go to the meat wagon, which is a refrigerated semi-trailer with a converted meat cutting area and a refrigerator and a register so that they can sell the meat in other areas. Most of the meat goes to the grocery stores or other restaurants, but some go to the grocery store, the Henderson's grocery store. The front of the store faced a busy street, and the Henderson's home faced a residential street. As the Hendersons lived on a corner street, but owned several acres of land on the street corner, which took up more than 50 acres. There was a large billboard-type sign in the front of the store with a solid white background and a solid black lettering saying Henderson's Market. There was a good-sized parking lot in front of the store that held more than 50 cars or so. There was two cart corrals at the end of the parking lot, and they were usually full of carts. Today was Friday, so the boys could stay and clean the meat area so they didn't have to worry about getting their schoolwork done tonight. They could do that tomorrow on Saturday, as they were allowed to rest on the weekends, but until noon. But then they got to work in the meat department later on. Today was also the day that they send the hides off to the textile mills. When they would take the hides off the animals, there would be two people dragging the hides off to a room, and they lay them down like they were blankets, and then coat them with salt between each hide that was stacked on top of each other. There was a semi-truck with a flatbed trailer pulled up out back behind the meat processing area, and the corrals for the animals in a vacant lot, just allied between the grocery store and the processing plant. There were rollers from the hide room that extended out to the back of the building, where they would load the trucks. The steel rollers were on conveyor systems, so two people would pick up the hides from the heaping pile and throw them on the rollers. After turning the conveyor system on, and the hides would get carried off in a straight path from the hide room out to the trucks, where there were two or more guys ready to pick up the hides from the rollers and throw them up on the trailer, where there were two more guys to stack the hides carefully on the trailer. The hides were heavy and the work was hard, so Daniel would usually have to offer some kind of incentive for his workers to actually want to volunteer for when the hide truck comes in. If there were two or more different types of hides, they would divide the different hides with a piece of cardboard written in a black magic marker saying what each stack of hides are, which are being stacked upon the pallets that were on the flatbed trailer. Usually Daniel's incentives were worth taking him up on. Like the incentive he used for this job was that the workers would receive 2 days off with pay and double pay for the days the days worked upon taking this job that they can take whenever they wanted to. In other words, if they wanted to take a day off, they could do it whenever, as long as they let Daniel or whatever office personnel know 24 hours ahead of time, or they could even let the PTO received carry on into the next year if they wanted to tack on to their vacation time or whatever they choose. Being that Daniel's incentives were worth the taking, everybody would volunteer, and they would have to put their names in a hat, and Daniel would have to pull the name out of the hat, and he would call everyone together and then write their name down in a roster for the volunteered day. The truck came late, so Daniel had to schedule this for the morning, as all of his workers were gathered together in the center of the meat processing building that evening. Even the grocery store workers wanted in on it. Daniel had a top hat that he used for this particular kind of event. He was standing in front of all of his 100-some workers and pulling names out of his hat, and when he would call the person's name, the person would step forward and stand next to Daniel in front of the whole group. Tommy Foster stepped forward with a smile on his face and a spring to his step as he stood next to Daniel. Judy Harris. Then Leonard Henderson. Leonard Henderson got up, casually strolled over to the line of people that began to develop. Frank Desmond. Christopher Henderson. Chris walked up to the line of people, looking big and awkward and smiling like he just won the lottery, as everyone was cheering for him. Janet Brown. If I called your name, that means you are to report here tomorrow at 6 a.m. sharp. The rest of you go back to work and enjoy your day off tomorrow. The rest of the group dispersed and went back to work. Sam. The alarm went off. Chris rolled out of bed and walked down the hall to the bathroom and brushed his teeth and washed his face. He went to peek into Leonard's room to see if he was still sleeping, and the light was on, and as he was putting on his clothes, and he glanced up to see Chris peeking. Are you okay, Chris? Do you need something? I'm glad we got this job together. Yeah, me too. He slipped on his rubber steel-toed boots and then stood up and started walking towards the door to start down the hall and go to the bathroom. Downstairs, their mother was in the kitchen cooking breakfast for everyone, as she had a cigarette in her mouth and rollers in her hair. You could hear the bacon sizzling and popping. You could smell the rich smell of bacon in the air, with a hint fresh scent of coffee added to the aroma. Of course, speckled with the wafting smell of Lucky Strikes. As they were making their way downstairs, Daniel was already sitting at the dinner table, waiting for his boys to come down. Tabitha greeted her boys with a cigarette in the corner of her smile and a hug as she was saying good morning. It seemed like the start of a great day, as everybody seemed to be in a good mood. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there. That's page 28. And pick up on page 28 of chapter 2 next time. And like I said, if you like what you're hearing, push the like button at the bottom, subscribe, Check out my books on Amazon, HDTHUL, spelled THUL. Thank you very much, and have a good day.